homeschool colleagues. I'm back for another module of Foundations of Biblical Homeschooling. This module is about creating learning plans. I'm going to cover in part one calendars and why calendars matter to biblical homeschooling. The second part is going to be about schedules, how to schedule courses if this is something you're interested in. If you're new to homeschooling, you might be interested in this. Or if you want to see different perspectives on scheduling, then you'll learn how I do it. And the third part is where do I get started, where I teach you how to implement the calendar with the schedules and the biblical principles all in one. So open your course handbook and follow along. Okay, in this module, I will help teach you how to create customized learning plans for teaching every subject with biblical principles. From calendars to schedules, you'll learn how to plan with purpose and biblical clarity. This lesson begins with calendars and schedules. The first thing I do every year is start with what days I'm going to homeschool. This helps me plan how many lessons I will need in a given subject. A traditional school calendar is 36 weeks with 4 quarters of 9 weeks each. That generally equates to 180 days of school, which some states require. If you go by a 36-week year, the more academic side of school can vary because even in public school, of which I taught for 6 years, teachers don't always teach rigorously all 180 days, and they don't always get through the curriculum. This doesn't mean we as homeschoolers have to get through the curriculum. The 36-week schedule allows for special days, field trips, and projects. I even use it for entrepreneurial endeavors, community service days, and even catching up on days, all of which are very important. Out of the 52 weeks in a year, this would even allow 16 weeks of vacation or non-school weeks for travel, visitors, sickness, extra chore days, home renovation projects, and simply mental health days. For some people, 36 weeks is not a state requirement. In this case, I recommend no less than 24 weeks of formal schooling of structured learning. 24 weeks is 6-week quarters or half a year. This works for families who want to get more done in a short amount of time, and it would probably not include special days, field trips, projects, entrepreneurial endeavors, community service days, catching up days, etc. This would be only for the bookwork type classes. Some say 2 hours of homeschooling is enough, and then they spend the rest of the day doing hands-on community-oriented stuff that is also educational. Some people still call that homeschooling. I would. Book work, or the typical academic work, can be done in a short amount of time, but in this case, parents usually use the other weeks for extracurricular learning. Parents can change their calendars to meet their family's needs from year to year. Private homeschooling allows for that kind of flexibility. I started with a rigorous 36-week year, 5 days a week with full school days. I structured book work, extracurricular activities, and everything in between. I didn't want my kids to have more than 2 hours of free time when they weren't doing anything. Even playtime was scheduled. As the years progressed, my children's needs changed, and of course, as they aged, they had different capabilities. After 20 plus years of homeschooling my kids and other people's kids, I've changed the schedule to meet the needs of my group without changing the time-tested and proven methods of teaching with biblical principles. The current schedule that works for me, especially since I work other jobs part-time, is a 28-week calendar. I have 4 7-week quarters, and I expect parents of my students to fill in the other 2 weeks with extracurricular activities of their choosing. I only teach all the core subjects. We meet 3 times a week for half a day, and then they have independent work 2 days of the week that only take 1 or 2 hours. Most of the curriculum works for that too. Most year-long curriculum is about 30 weeks, give or take a couple weeks. I am now a stronger advocate for more time for my kids to learn life skills and develop their personal passions. That's so important. That's why this works for us. And speaking of life skills, there are so many things that you can learn or that you can teach your children, such as learning a musical instrument, learning how to sing, sewing, cooking, woodworking, auto mechanics, art, poetry, construction, painting a house, gardening, website or graphic design, film, Legos, robotics, and the list goes on. I always had some kind of extracurricular activity going on for my kids. I desire my kids to focus on book work wholeheartedly when it's time. And then I want them to explore and learn new skills after their academic learning time is over. I want my students to be knowledgeable, deep thinkers, which is what the academic work is for, and I want them to be skilled at practical things too. So your homework would be to decide how many weeks you're going to have school and what days are going to be dedicated to the academic stuff. Then from there, we can start planning our schedules. On the next page is where I talk about schedules. This lesson is about how to give a faithful effort to teach subjects within the context of multiple children with different age groups and different academic levels. Because we all know homeschool parents have this exact situation going on. I'm going to list all the subjects I would teach and then show you on a weekly schedule how I fit them all together. So the following chart is a guideline for weekly teaching times. This chart shows how many minutes are recommended, not required, for each subject and each grade level. For reading in the lower grades, you can see that it progresses from 30 minutes to an hour as they age. For spelling, you go from 10 minutes all the way to 45 minutes or an hour if it takes that long. Then for grammar, anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes, and that's only twice a day. And I did forget to mention, reading should be 5 days a week, of course, or more in the lower grades in elementary. But spelling is only 3 or 4 days. Kids only need 3 or 4 days of practice with their spelling words to get ready for the test. And they also need instruction on new words only for 3 or 4 days. That's all it takes. Back to grammar. That's only 2 days for 10 to 30 minutes, depending on their age. Writing at the beginning should be 5 days a week for 10 to 15 minutes. This includes penmanship and how to write a basic sentence. And it increases from 10 minutes all the way to an hour. And you notice that as they get older, they do less days of writing. For math, it should be 5 days or 4 days as they get older. And math should take a little bit longer because you want to not only teach them new concepts and have them practice it, but you want to set aside time for playing games or doing activities that will give them even more practice. Then for science or social studies, that goes from 20 minutes, 2 days a week, or 30 minutes, 3 days a week, all the way to an hour to 4 days a week. Then I have the subject of creative arts, which includes all kinds of things. But I want my kids 3 or 4, and as they get older, 5 days a week to work on something that's creative. That would be the music or the art or PE or something like that. Then I have a business category. because I want to teach my kids from the very beginning the basics of money and how it works, saving, spending, budgeting, and planning for the future. And when they get older, especially in middle school, I start teaching them how to run a business, how to plan and run a business. Then the last subject I call is home. I schedule time 1 to 3 hours or 4 hours, 5 days a week, where my kids are doing chores or playing at home, being creative. So this might be overwhelming, but you only have to focus on the parts where you have needs. Generally speaking, each of the grade range columns are based on academic level, not age. So if you have children all in the lower level, then you only need to focus on that level. If you have one in multiple levels, then you can decide which one you want to adjust to meet the needs. So let's say you have a lower elementary child and you're only spending 30 minutes on math, but you have a upper elementary child that needs 45 minutes of math. So when you have this situation, if you don't have an hour and 15 minutes for math, then cut down the time for each. You could do 20 minutes and 20 minutes, or 20 minutes and 30 minutes, or something like that. So you don't really have to like stress out that you get one lesson done per day, because a lot of times children can catch up on lessons in a fast amount of time in certain stages of their learning progress. And so that's why, hey, just make a schedule that fits your family's needs and that you can deal with, and just go through the lessons at a pace that is natural and not stressful. Below is a sample schedule for all one level. It has basic time frames on it, and it's a 4-day academic week, I should say. We can base any family schedule off of this one schedule. Okay, so we're going to go through it. I have Monday through Friday, and you'll notice that most of the day on Thursday is for co-op. After co-op, we would read and do math and chores and some business. But the rest of the days, I have 3 or 4 days. You'll even notice my fourth day is a little bit different. On Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I have 30 minutes for reading, 30 minutes for spelling, 30 minutes for writing or grammar. Again, grammar is only 2 days a week, and I would do less writing on those days and more writing on Wednesday when I don't have grammar. And then math is for 45 minutes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a little bit on Thursday, and then back to a full 45 minutes on Friday. So that's more like 4.5 days, maybe 4 days. And then I have 30 minutes for science or history, 2 days a week. And then we have some kind of family project or something we're doing at home, organizing, cleaning, going on a field trip, whatever we want to do. That would be on that time frame. And then after lunch, we would have read aloud. So this would be where your child is reading to you. If you have young children, this is so important for them to read out loud to you. If you have older children, then you can read out loud to them, because even older children enjoy listening to good books. And then there's chores and time for creative arts on Monday and Tuesday, or business on Wednesday and Thursday. Now, Friday is a different schedule. We'll have the spelling test, go to the library, because I think a regular library trip is so important to homeschooling. When you're there, have them read books independently. And then when you come back, you can do math, and then you can do some fun things, maybe a play date, maybe a field trip, maybe just chilling at home for a little while. And then hanging out with friends, family night, whatever you need to do on Friday afternoons. We all know moms especially can get tired by that time, so that's not as structured. But this is just a base schedule to show you how I fit all of those subjects into 1 week. And again, it's a baseline, not a recommendation unless you want to use it. Let's move on to the second page of schedules. Now that we have a good idea of a typical schedule, now I'm going to show you how to schedule multiple children in a given day. So here's a sample schedule with two different groups, a first and second grade group and a fifth and sixth grade group. In bold, I have the subject, whether it's level 1 or level 3 in this case, and I just put those levels because that's easier for me to remember. If it was third and fourth grade, I might have a level 2. But underneath the subject is a description of my routine. So this is a good time to talk about the fact that routines are so important in creating good schedules. So in our case, we did phonogram review, spelling dictation, which would be new spelling words, and then spelling practice of old words. The yellow indicates the time frame that I'm teaching, and the older group would be doing something independent. So that's the juggle you have to go through, is deciding what is the independent child going to do while I'm working with the dependent child. So my group 3 or the older kids would be working on their essay and doing grammar on their own. And then I switch. So then the younger group is doing writing or grammar. They're writing sentences or copy work or penmanship. And then they're doing a little bit of grammar. And then I'm working with the older group with spelling. Then we have a short break. And then I go into the lower group with math. I do the lesson with them while the older kids are doing reading workbooks. And then after math, the younger kids are doing productive creative play. And I would create all kinds of different things. Sometimes I've heard people call this like a morning basket, where it's like a choice of things, but this is not a basket. It's more just like you have a choice of different activities you can be engaged with, and you're required to be engaged with them while I'm teaching math for the older group. So I go through the math lesson with them there. And then I move on to reading with the younger group, while the older group is doing a vocabulary workbook. Then after lunch, we have science or history, read aloud, where I'm reading aloud to them, and we're doing notebook work or hands-on project. Then after that, my kids will work on creative business ideas, and we'll do all of this together. The younger ones can help the older ones, but you could also have the younger ones doing their own thing. It's just a matter of personal preference. So this is just a sample. You as the parent have to plan your day in the best way that fits your family. This is just a sample schedule. You as the parent have to plan your day in the best way that fits your family. This way of thinking about planning is child-centered because the exact activities and lessons that your child does is dependent upon what they are capable of. Sometimes a child can only do a partial lesson, or the lesson has to be more engaging and you have to improvise. There were many times when my children were younger that I had to ditch the lesson and come up with a more engaging and creative way to teach. And some days everyone will be feeling off schedule, and that's okay. Momentum breaks up, and there is some kind of disruption that takes you off track. Simply get back on track when you can and forget what was missed. In the end, you're doing your best, and you'll never remember those times that you didn't do something on your schedule. There is no perfect schedule. So the best way to schedule is to be flexible with your plan. Even I, as a professional teacher, have to adjust instruction. Sometimes I just can't follow the curriculum and I have to find a replacement, or I just get rid of it. Other times, I have to allow a child who wants to keep working on a subject they prefer or are motivated to work on. There might be days when your entire day is interrupted with something and you have to skip school. That's okay too. Schedules are guidelines. They help keep us on track if we are able. As they say, if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it. On the other hand, if you don't follow the times, but you're able to go from one subject to the next, that's great too. I recommend using a schedule even if you don't follow it much, because when you do feel off track, you'll want to know what you should do about it. So that is the mindset you need as a biblical homeschooler. You've got your calendar and you've got your schedule. You know how long each subject should be taught, and therefore you can plan appropriately and teach with confidence. Not every subject is going to be taught 5 days a week. And you certainly don't have to spend all day sitting at the table with a paper, pencil, or book. Change it up. Go with the flow of your child. Your child is going to do exactly what they need to do. If they need to learn in shorter amounts of time, plan it that way. If your children want to go longer, then give them that time. If you skip days and miss lessons, simply go back to them. In the span of 12 years, none of that matters. What matters is consistency. Consistency is the key to helping your children progress. And don't neglect the times when you know your child needs more attention in a particular subject. Hunker down and find time to focus on that child and give them the time and attention they need to learn that skill. It could be before bed. It could be at dinner time while you're cooking. It doesn't matter. Find a way that fits for you and your child. In the next section, part 3 of Module 6, I'm going to show you how to get started today.